everyone. Thanks to the wonders of technology, I get to share a bit with you about what I was going to share on Sunday, but because of factors outside of our control, the weather, are unable to hold a church service together. But we know that church isn't just about a place you go on a Sunday morning, but it's about a people that you are and how you express your love of God and love of neighbor to this world. And so we hope that you had a good day of being the church, even if you didn't get to go to a church service on Sunday. Or maybe you spent some time watching on television or online a church service that you can connect to and worship with God. And it's the amazing thing about technology is that we have this opportunity, because technology has increased and improved so much over the years, to connect and be connected in ways that we never ever had before. Such as this right now. You know, I remember as a kid, when we had television, it was an older television set. You know, we didn't always have the most money, so I think a lot of times we relied on gifts from other people or hand-me-downs of old TVs, or we made things last that sometimes we don't do nowadays. But I remember the TV we had as a kid that we watched most of the time. It was one of those old TVs that didn't have a remote control. You know, actually what it had is it had a little dial on it, two dials, and you'd click it. You'd have to click to get the channels up to 10, and then you had another dial to get up to after 10, so up to about 50 or so. And it drove me nuts because I knew that remote controls existed. I knew that people could sit on their couch, watch a show, skip the commercials by flipping through the channels, but I had to get up and I had to click it all the time. Now, as an adult, like, I have that control. I have a TV with a remote. And actually, my remote is so tiny. I use a thing called Apple TV, and it's so tiny that it has just a few buttons on it. But it's all I need, and it does what I need to do. It allows me to sit on the couch and absolutely do nothing to change the channels. It's kind of nice. Lazy, but kind of nice. The only problem with it is that even though I have that in my control, I have the ability to change the channels, what I don't have in my control is how often it gets lost. Almost every day that remote goes missing. It drives me crazy that we can't find it. The other problem with it is that this little box that we use for our television to stream things online and to watch shows and movies, it doesn't have buttons on it. So you need that remote to do things. So even though I have this element of control, I don't really have it. I have this remote that's supposed to do amazing things, but if I lose it, I've got nothing. And this morning, or this time together as we're talking, really what we're talking about is control. And control is what I think is actually the biggest problem we all face in life. I think all of us to some degree struggle with control. You might be thinking, well, no, I don't. I don't know what you're talking about. I have no control problems. And maybe you don't. And that's possible. But I think for a lot of us, we have different things in our lives that demonstrate that we have a struggle where we want to control things so badly that we will do whatever we can to make sure we do. You know, in some ways it might show it in your life is maybe for yourself that you're like a backseat driver. So maybe either you drive all the time, you won't let anybody drive your car, or when you're not driving, maybe you're a side seat or maybe it's a back seat, you're always telling people what to do and where to go, how fast to push on that pedal, how much they have to slow down, to turn their turn signal on to make sure they turn left here, right there. You don't trust them to understand that they know where they're going, that you need to tell them, and you kind of like to have that little bit of control. Even though you don't have that wheel, you're still telling them where to go. So you get this idea that you're controlling it. Or maybe it looks different for you in another way. Maybe you just don't like people touching your stuff. I know this is something that I wrestle with a lot, is that you just don't want people to touch it. That's it. That's all. Maybe it's because you have a very organized system. That's not me, that's for sure. You don't want people messing up the way you have things organized. Or maybe it's just feel weird about people touching your stuff. There's no real big reason. But that's one of the things that you want to control because it's your stuff. You don't want anyone else to touch it. Or maybe it looks even different. Maybe you are somebody who plans excessively, like you over-plan things. Now, planning is a good thing. It's a good idea to have goals, to prepare, to do things. But when you over-plan to a T, it's like you want to manage every moment possible. So maybe it's your family vacation, and you're like, okay, as soon as we land in Florida, what we're doing is we're getting a taxi, and after we get on that taxi, we get to the hotel, we have 3 minutes to drop our bags off, check in, and then we're heading to Disney World, and we've got 3 hours at Disney World, and then we're going to do this for dinner, and then we got this, and you got all the times lined up, and everything has to be organized like crazy, and you've just planned it so well that there's no room for spontaneity. You overplan things because you want to control it. You want to know how things will end up. I know that sometimes I love to plan things. I love to think ahead. And so sometimes like things like weather, when they mess it up a bit and there's freezing rain, it messes up those plans that I thought I had control over. I thought how Sunday morning was going to work out. Maybe it looks a little bit different, is that you have a hard time just not knowing things. You struggle with the idea of ambiguity. I struggle with the word ambiguity. I mean, you just struggle with the idea that you don't know something. So maybe it's in your home, and you know, you got siblings, maybe you got brothers and sisters, and you're all having dinner, and one of them says, "Hey, you know what happened at school today?" He's like, "Oh yeah, that was funny. You remember that?" And you're like, "I don't know. What was it? You gotta tell me. You gotta tell me what it was." And it has nothing to do with you, but you just have to know what that thing was. Or maybe it's in your work environment that you need to know what everybody is doing all the time, because you just need to know. Or maybe it's in the church, and I see this a lot in church, is that you just need to know every little detail of everything that's happened. Not because it really affects you, but you just need to know. I see this a lot when we have conversations around orders of service and bulletins and things like that. There's this need to control this thing that really does not change your life, does not affect you, but you have this struggle with ambiguity, this struggle with not knowing. It's a sign that control is coming out in your life. And, you know, there's other ways that it comes out too. Maybe you think that no one else can do a job as good as you, so you just always do it. I wrestle with this one too. It's not that I don't think anyone else can do a job as good as me. It's just that I know what I can do, and I want to do it the way I want to do it. And that's an element of control that I struggle with, where you think, okay, well, no one else is going to be as good as me, either musically or maybe in art, or maybe just in cleaning, or maybe whatever it is. Maybe it's the thing that you know you're good at, and no one else can do it as good as you, so you're just not going to give anybody else a chance. You're just going to do it yourself. It's one of those ways that we kind of control. And then, you know, one of the things that I struggle with, not for myself, but when other people try to do, is when they micromanage you. It drives me nuts. I've worked in environments where people try to micromanage you. They try to tell you what to do all the time, what you should be doing. Those are things that people just need control over. They're trying to dominate. They're trying to be the lead on things that really don't pertain to them. They don't really, aren't their business in some cases, but they feel the need to try to control it. You know, and another way I see is that you don't let go of what you say is yours. Maybe it's, you know, as a kid, where you're like, hey, these toys are mine. If you had little kids, you know what this is like. You maybe have had 2 kids, or you've been around kids at school or anything like that. You know, and one of them's playing with something, and the other one tries to grab it, and they go, oh, it's mine, and they take it back. You know, this mine idea, it doesn't go away at childhood. Sometimes we hold on to that. Maybe it's the remote control. When you're watching TV and you put it down on the table, and maybe your significant other, your husband, your wife, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, maybe it's even your brother or sister, goes to grab it, and you just grab it quickly. Can't let anybody else have it. You just have to have that. It's yours. It's control. That's what it is. You know, control is such a problem, because the reality is those little things, all those things that we think we're doing and give us some idea of control, they're not good. Because really, we don't actually have control. The truth of the matter is that we don't control anything that really matters. Anything that's really important. Think about the people you love in your life. Maybe they've made bad choices. You know, I've known people who made choices with drugs and alcohol and sexual relationships that you know they're not good for them, but they choose to do them anyway. There's nothing you can do to control that person. People have the freedom to make their own choices, whether it's your kids, your spouse, your brothers, sisters, family members. You can't control them. You have no control over another person, and the truth is also, you have no control over yourself. You might think there are things you do, maybe you overplan, maybe you micromanage, maybe you do all these things that you think you're giving yourself control. The reality is you don't. You don't know how things will turn out. You can do all the work you want, you can try as hard as you want, but that control really isn't there. All these little things we grab onto, this fear of not knowing, this unable to be ambiguous about stuff, this trying to be a backseat driver all the time, this taking of what's mine and holding on to it dearly, whether it's a thing, a possession, or a ministry, or a family member, those things aren't real. Those are ways you try to trick yourself and you don't even realize about control. The truth of the matter, you have no control. And that's why it's such a problem. It's such a problem because we want it so bad, and we do things to pretend like we have it, that actually do us more harm than anything else. And this year, as we're in a new year, maybe you've made some resolutions. There are some things that maybe you want to try to control in your life. Maybe it's your weight, maybe it's your attitude, maybe it's how you deal with other people. whatever it might be. Maybe it's your job situations, things like that. You're trying to bring good things out into those things. The first thing you need to do, three things I think you need to know, is you need to know you have no control. And you just need to lose control altogether. Just lose this idea, this illusion that you have the ability to change things yourself. In fact, this is one of the things I think comes up in Scripture over and over again. And in a long, long time ago in the Psalms, it was during a period of time where there's great peace in the world. King Jehoshaphat is one of my favorite characters that comes up in the Book of Chronicles, was the leader of the nation at the time. And he had things peaceful. People were worshiping God, things were going good. And the psalm writer, the Psalm 46, wrote this. And he wrote this great psalm in Psalm 46. Maybe take some time to read it. Talking about how God is their refuge, and God's the one who rescued them, and they had come through some bad stuff. And God was there for them, and he did all these things. And at the end of it, he quotes God. He quotes God, and he says, in Psalm 46, verse 10, which, if you read it, it says, he says, being God, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth." Now this idea of be still, we think, okay, well, relax. Just ease into it. Relax. Be peaceful. And you might think these quaint little beautiful things, but this idea of be still, in the Hebrew, and the way it was talked about and the way it was written here, it's like, be quiet. Give up. Know that I am God. The intonation here isn't like, hey, just relax, just know I'm God. It says, give up, know that I'm God. And what the psalmist is saying, he says, this is how they found peace. This is how they found reliance and realization that they could have peace and have joy and have life. It's because they realized that God was God. They gave up the control that they thought they had, and they let God be God. This psalm comes out in the times I said when Jehoshaphat was king. And if you read Jehoshaphat's story in 2 Chronicles 20 and on, you get to a point in the story where they're going to go at war. And the first thing they do to go at war is they don't go out and plan and plot, is they go out and worship. And this is where the psalm is coming from. The psalm is coming from a place of saying that when we let God be God and not try to control everything, we will know that he is exalted above everything else, meaning he is higher, he is better, he's more important, and he will give you that peace. He will give you that hope, that life, that stuff that you want. And this is what the message of the Psalms is saying. He says, give up control. Give up trying to overplan things. Give up trying to do everything. Just be still. Be quiet. Rest in knowing that God is God. You are not God. And he can do better things than you could imagine. The same principle comes up later on. Actually, Jesus is speaking to his disciples in the Gospel of Matthew, the story. The good news that Matthew is sharing about us, about who Jesus was and what he did. And in Matthew 16, verse 24 or 26, comes to a point in the story where Jesus is speaking. He says, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross. Follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life will find it. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit or lose their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? Jesus, when he's speaking to his followers, says, the only way you'll ever really find life is to realize you need to give it up. You trying to plan out what your career is going to be, you trying to plan out how your family is going to work, you're trying to plan out how school is going to work, you're trying to plan out how your parents are going to teach you, how you're going to teach your sisters and brothers, and how you're going to treat your kids. You trying to over-manage everything, to plan everything out step by step by step, will not give you life. The only way for you to experience life in all of its fullness is to give it up. Give up control. Stop trying to be in charge all the time. Stop trying to do all those things that you think will make life better, and let God be God. Jesus uses the image of picking up your cross, this crucifixion device, this torture device, saying, pick up that thing that's going to take your life. Recognize it's not yours to control, and you will find it. I don't know what that is for you. I don't know where you're at. Maybe you have health concerns, and you're thinking, okay, if I can just get healthy enough to do X, Y, Z. Sometimes we have no control over those things. There was a news story a little while ago of a woman who had a horrible disease, and it's a sad story to read. And she wanted to have control of when she died. She didn't want to go so far in her disease that she was so ill and couldn't enjoy life. She wanted to live up to a point, do some things she wanted to do, and then choose when to die. If you read the articles about it, you can research them online. she wanted, one of them says that she wanted to control how and when she died. And she got that wish. But it's an illusion, because you can't. That's one of the scary things, because you can't control these things. You can't control when you live, when you die. What you can do is you can control yourself. You can have self-control. You can be disciplined. You can choose not to do certain things. But you can't stop all the outside factors around in your life. You can't stop how things are going to play out. And so one of the things that we need to learn to do is to give up that control. And then embrace the things that we can. For Jesus, when he's talking to the disciples, he says, pick up your cross. That's something you can control. You can pick up your attitude. You can pick up how you choose to behave, what you choose to engage in, what you choose to realize. But you can't control everything else. You can't. And so it's one of the things that we need to do to realize so we move forward in life. You have to give up control. If you use a PC at home, a computer, maybe you're watching this on a computer right now, one of the interesting things that you can do on computers is you press Ctrl-Alt-Delete and you restart your system, or it brings up a task manager in some cases. And that was an error actually on the part of Bill Gates when they created it, if you read about it. And it was never supposed to be, but it's the most useful thing ever, because often you need to just restart. And for us as human beings, we don't have 3 buttons that we can press. But there are 3 things that we can work on. One of them is to give up control. The following 2 Sundays we're going to talk about the other 2 things. The first thing we need to do is to experience life in its fullness, to be the people who God has made us to be. We need to give up control. Realize we never had it in the first place. So it shouldn't be too hard. But the truth is, it is hard. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to consider. Try and think about this. Maybe take some time today after you watch this immediately. Or maybe take some time in the evening, talk with some people that you know, who you love, over coffee or something like that. And say, hey, what do I need to give up control of? Maybe you're blind to it in your life. Maybe you don't realize that you're the person who always tries to manage everybody else's life. Maybe you don't see it because that's just who you are. So go to people you trust and say, hey, what can you see in my life that I need to give up control of? Or maybe it's completely clear to you. Maybe you're trying to control your kids, or you're trying to control your career, or trying to control your coworkers or your spouse. Maybe you're just trying to control yourself to be something that you're not really, and you feel like you're depriving yourself. Whatever it might be, think about it, ponder it, meditate on it. Ask God to reveal that in you. Say, God, what can I give up control of? And write it down. Write it down on a piece of paper. A piece of paper that you're going to hold on to, not just a scrap that you're going to throw out. It's great if you recycle, keep recycling, that's great. But make sure you put it somewhere that you can remember and look at it every day. Maybe for me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in my pocket, in my shirt. Every day I change my shirt, obviously. But I take whatever's in my pocket, I put it on my desk. And the next day I usually take it and I put it back in my pocket, because usually my bank card's there, things like that. So wherever you can keep it as a reminder, maybe it's your wallet, maybe it's on your fridge, maybe it's you tape it to your TV screen, so you have to flip it over every time you go to watch TV. Write something, right? God, dear God, what do I need to give up control of? And then pray about it and just go, God, help me to give up control of this. And every day, commit. Say, God, how can I improve on my need to control this? Maybe it's something small. Maybe it's something small that really has nothing to do with you. Maybe it's something that's kind of distant from you. Maybe it's something about church and you're like, hey, you know what, I'm just going to try to give up this to not try and be in control so much. Maybe it's something big in your life. Maybe it's your family. Maybe it's yourself, like I said. Maybe it's whatever it might be. Whatever it is, write it down. Look at it every day. Ask God to help you to give up control of that thing. And then consciously choose to try to give up and lose that control. Every time that thing kind of nags at you, like pulling you back, like I just got to do this, go, okay, I'm not going to do this. Maybe it's your backseat driver. Every time you start to say, hey, you got to turn left, go, oh, hey, if you need to know directions, ask me, but I'll be quiet from now on. Maybe he's not talking at all. It might be tough for some of us, but try it. We've got to give up control. When Jesus says in John's Gospel that he's come to give us life and life of all its fullness, part of that is to pick up our cross, to pick up that thing that we think we can try to control, and to realize that it's not ours, and to follow God, to lose ourselves, to lose everything we think we have. and say, God, you are God, and I'm going to be still and know that. I pray that you try that this week, and that when we gather together again on Sunday, we'll see the next step on that Control Alt Delete of how we can reboot our lives and see what God might have for us.